Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Berlin Select Board meeting for Monday, November 28th. I'll start off with our disclaimer here that the meetings of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access channel, YouTube. So your voice, your image, and your telephone number may be recorded. It is 7 o'clock and I will call our meeting to order. I think our first order of business is the minutes from November 14th, which both seems like it was 5 days ago and 3 months ago.
I would make a motion to approve the November 14th minutes.
Second.
I think we're ready for a vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
Is there any correspondence, Kristen?
I do not have any specific correspondence.
Did we get a response from Levine?
Late today, the Clinton item did receive a response. I can pull that up if you'd like. If you give me just one moment. So, we had written, just for context for the audience, we had written a letter to LL Bean. They had their grand opening. They're here in Berlin, very excited to have them. Unfortunately, it was very Hudson focused, and they gave a lovely donation to the Metro West Boys and Girls Club, which from our understanding is not accessible by any of the kids from Berlin. So we did receive a response, or the Clinton item did receive a response from them today. And would you like me to read it, Scott?
You can pick up some highlights, but I have it in front of me as well.
Okay. So basically, they say they're thrilled to be here in Berlin. Although they are physically located in Berlin, as named on their website, like all stores at Highland Commons, they have a Hudson address because the Hudson Post Office processes the mail for all of the stores at Highland Commons. Further, customers seeking directions to our store via online maps are directed to an East Hudson address. Therefore, to maintain alignment and avoid confusion amongst our customers, we do use Hudson as our address. This is simply a recognition of how we are officially listed and how our customers are most likely to find us. They noted they have a long-standing partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and that the Boys and Girls Club of Metro West is proud to serve the children of Berlin, Hudson, and the surrounding communities.
Okay.
I disagree, and I'm going to share with you why I disagree. I pulled this off of the website. Can you see this?
No. Oh, there.
There it goes. Yep.
So it says the Boys and Girls Club of Metro West is one of the largest, blah, 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 Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and serves the communities of, well, we are not Metro West, and surrounding Marlborough, Hudson, and Framingham. So this came right off the Hudson website. So funny how Berlin is added here in his comment, but if you look at the website, it's not there.
Yeah. And we don't know whether the response that Jan got was in response to our letter. Or do
So it's my understanding the Clinton item was one of the CCs on the letter. So they did receive a copy of the letter, and they had reached out for comment to LL Bean.
It actually also was a point of discussion actually at the Economic Development Committee meeting that LL Bean did attend. And so it was brought up there as well. And so even without our letter, they probably are aware that this confusion. We actually had some time at the EDC talking about some of the confusion of what towns people are in, because it's not just a Highland Commons issue, it's over also at Solomon Pond Mall, where is it a Berlin business or is it a Marlborough business? I think where it's not been as big of issue in Solomon Pond is there's not been a lot of recent ads where someone says they're in town A when they're really in town B, or there's not a business over there I know that calls themselves, urgent care of Marlborough when they're really in Berlin, like was happening up in Highland Commons. It's probably a mistake we made when we did the joint development agreement with the towns and agreed that Hudson would be where all they get all their mail from.
It could be, but it's a shame that they haven't acknowledged Berlin.
Well, it's a shame that they think that Berlin is able to go to the Boys and Girls Club and they are not.
Well,
Right.
I think it's worthy of maybe I'll do a call over to Boys and Girls Club just to confirm that, because they might be as a smaller town. They're just not listing us on the list of towns, because there's other towns in that area besides Framingham, Marlborough, and Hudson.
But those were the ones that were specifically stated at the opening, that that's what the check was going to go for, was for the towns of Hudson, Marlborough, and Framingham.
I think I would agree, Scott, though we should just double check and make sure, since it says surrounding towns, that we're not included in that.
And it's kind of a shame too, because those are a distance for children in Berlin. Even if we were allowed to go, I don't think that they would attend.
Well, and I think too, the tone of the letter to LL Bean was really, tried to be excited to have them here and, uplifting, and, we just would love it if you could acknowledge that you were here. And I, really would love to just see, I don't know how we address the confusion with the mailing address piece. But I would love to see some way to resolve this for the future. So it's something we can think on and, see what we can do. I mean, I don't know that you can change mailing address, but
Yeah.
it does seem to be that's where everything kind of stemmed from in this case.
Well, I know it's only the mailing address. I mean, they are in Berlin.
Yep.
But again, I would not single out LL Bean. I mean, that we have the urgent care, Emerson Urgent Care of Hudson, which is way more inside our boundaries than LL Bean is, that has Hudson in their name.
Right.
Maybe it's something that we need to start working closer with Benderson when a new company comes in to there, that, we sit down with them and make it very clear to them that they are on the Berlin side of the line. Chief, while you're here, here's a question. So God forbid something happen and LL Bean puts in a call for help, whether it's for you or whether it's for Chief Shartner's crew, who goes? Hudson or Berlin?
I think that if there's any alarms that are off a pre-planned system, they come to Berlin. The thing that you don't have any control over is if they use a cell phone, and that goes into dispatch, that's like right on the line. I think in my experience there, I'm not sure how many the chief might be able to answer, but the line actually goes right through the middle of 2 or 3 stores up there where we work together. First of all, we have a really good working relationship with Hudson Fire. I can't speak for the chief, but the things that I've watched with Hudson Police has been positive. And it's important who goes, but it also is important that they get the care and the response as soon as possible to wherever it's received. So I've been to a bunch of calls up there, and the Hudson engine's coming in already there or coming in behind us. So it's like kind of like a roll of the dice, but the coverage is there. They do extensive training and inspections at the beginning to make sure that when the alarm is sounded, it goes to the right jurisdiction.
Well, so that's a question. Who did the building inspection, Richard or Hudson?
I would be safe to say Richard. I know that.
I used to support the building inspector. Anything that is on our side of the line is inspected by the town of Berlin.
And I know that the lieutenant fire prevention officer spent a lot of time in there at the LL Bean prior to them opening to make sure that all the systems were a go. So fire alarm, sprinklers, et cetera. So, and I know the building inspector and the fire prevention tag team that building got a considerable amount of time in there.
So LL Bean, thank you very much to Berlin.
Well, I guess we'll continue it after Scott calls and confirms if kids from town can go. And then
Yep.
maybe that's a follow-up letter. Don't know.
Well, I think in the letter, we already mentioned that they can't avail themselves of the Metro West Boys and Girls Club.
Well, we were of that impression. Maybe that impression is wrong.
Correct.
And until in summary section, I'd love to hear directly from the Boys and Girls Club, because if we're wrong, we should admit it and then,
Yep.
help make sure that our kids who would like to use their services have a chance to use those services.
More to
So I'll reach
more to
out.
come.
I'll let you know what I see. And so that was under correspondence, and you didn't say there's other things worthy sort of for tonight. And some other emails, but I don't know if they're necessarily things that need to be brought up here.
Nothing that rose to the top. That one was a late contender,
Yeah.
so I didn't have that one in there, but I believe we're all set pretty much on everything else. It was a relatively quiet Thanksgiving week.
Good. Well, Chief, you're here. I'm gonna move the general public on to after we do these couple of hearings. One, so there could be a couple other folks here. But with the chief here and both chiefs here and I believe the representative from Verizon here, and I would jump into those. And so let's talk about the ambulance.
Okay, I'm not sure where you want to start. It's been a steady process since right after we got the first initial funding of the 320 out of the EMS funds. And we looked at multiple units, developed specs. When you develop the specs, you get a quote back. And the first quotes, I've been buying apparatus for a long time. First time I ever had sticker shock. So it's like, I said, "Nope, that's way too much to spend." We worked with 3 different vendors and went back out and did our homework with the other vendors. Again, develop specs takes months to do it. And 2 other vendors and came in with a price that I think is a really good deal. It's the lowest of the 3. Really good deal for the town of Berlin, and it will give you an ambulance that will serve the town very excellently for 10 years. So it gives them all the options that they need. It's set up that if we need to, if you make a decision down the road to go to ALS, it's set up so that you can have that function in there. It has the needed storage, which in places for certain equipment. So it's like, but again, it's well above the 320 that we had when we started the proceedings last year. So we did our homework. Just for the communications alone is over $14,000. There's a lot of money tied up with it. OEMS is looking for safety in the back of the rig now. When I grew up, we had one radio head in the back. Now they want you to be belted in and seat belted wherever you are and be able to reach the microphone from wherever you're sitting, either one side or the other. So you have dual heads on one radio. Then we put the tri-band radio in the front so we can talk to all our mutual aid partners. And the other thing that I had, I think the most sticker shock on was the load system. OEMS highly recommends, due to back injuries, a load system. And we have a Stryker one on the current 6A2, and we wanted to mimic that. And it went from the last one I bought only a year and a half before I retired, the first time, at $32,000 to $62,000. And that's something that you put the stretcher on it, picks it up to, it's good for up to 700 pounds. So it handles most people that you deal with. You still have to assist it. But the committee was formed and they did their homework. They spent a lot of time, asked me a lot of questions from my experience. And I wanted them to be comfortable with what they were getting, because those are the people who are in it every single day and night when it moves. And I think there was prior to my arrival here, there was 1, maybe 2 people that were making all these decisions without input from the troops. And the troops are the ones that make the system go. So they got their input. And we decided on a wheel coach. It was also the best we had for delivery time. of the 3 rigs that we looked at, 2 were at 30-month delivery times because of the supply and demand, and this one was at 20. So it's like, that was another go, and this was, and they met the trade-in value of the 6A1. And so the total price for it was the $433,191. So that's $191 over what we already had kind of set aside to buy that. And just to let you know, that first amount of money that was set was told that, oh, that's plenty of money to get it. We worked really closely and went and did an inspection of a new rig that Bolton had, and I was looked at the spec, saw how much they paid, put in a slight amount for increases and said, well, that's all the money was assured. That's all the money that you'll need to get close to the rig that Bolton had. So it's like we kind of played our cards in that direction, and we didn't make out really well with the money that we had. There was sharp increases, and I'm talking to the other fire chiefs in the area and the ones that I know when I see them. And it's like, it's just something that everybody's dealing with. Fire trucks, ambulances are just going crazy on the cost. And it's like the cost of doing business. And it's like, but you got to get a good rig, but we didn't. And I go back to our conversation on some vehicles. We didn't get the Denali model, but we got something that's really, really good and will be a really good fit for my personnel. So that's where we are. And my what I bring to you, and I hope you got a bunch of questions for me so I can answer them. I've been looking at this paperwork for 2 or 3 days now. Is an extra above the 320, 113,191. In talking with the TA, ARPA funding came about, but there's a finance team that's way smarter with where money comes from than I am. So it's like they'll decide with input from whoever makes that decision at your level in the finance team where that comes from. And to be honest with you, it doesn't matter to me where it comes from as long as we can get that amount and move forward with getting the contract down and getting it ordered so they can be built.
So
What can I answer for questions?
so the total amount that we're short is what, Chief?
113,191.
Okay,
So this is a bit of a continuation of the ARPA discussion that we had on the 14th, and wanted to bring in Chief so that he could explain
Right.
it a little more thoroughly and answer some of those questions.
I think of all the vehicles that I've purchased in my career, this is the one that had the most homework done at different models to get to the final product. So it's like, I'm happy with the way that they did it. I'm happy with what the dealer came and told me at the final couple of meetings. So it's like, and I think that you'll be very happy with it. It's got it's going to be fit the town of Berlin really, really well.
Peg?
All right, you ready?
Go ahead,
I
fire
have,
away.
Okay, so is it purchased or not? Yes or no?
No,
Okay. So in Article 7 of last year's town meeting, where we approved, or the town, not we, the town,
Yep.
approved the 5,000 in addition to the 315,000. Since this is an overage and we have to get town permission to pay a bill that's late, why is this any different that this doesn't have to go back to the town for a vote for them to approve this money?
because we haven't, and again,
We
on the
haven't
procurement
purchased
side, I'm not an expert, but I would say that we haven't signed a contract and we don't have an invoice to pay. That comes when the vehicle is finished. But we looked at these 3 models, these 3 vendors, and this is the one that best fits what I feel our budget and what the needs are on the street day and night by our EMS personnel.
If I could take a stab, Chief Clark, that I believe that the town meeting approved money, and now you're realizing that's going to cost more than that amount of money. If the select board had money that did not require town meeting approval, like ARPA funds, we potentially could, as a select board, approve it so that you could sign a contract for a $330,000 ambulance. And so my then follow-up question is, and I think it goes sort of with Peg's, is that if we decided we would like this to go in front of the taxpayers and use other pools of money like stabilization or ambulance reserves or free cash or any of the other various funds that we have, what is the risk we are taking if we wait until May?
Is that, I'm not sure how many price increases you may see. It's a lot of money now. It's only going to go up. The supply and demand is, like I said, people are waiting 30 months for them. So it's like, my request would be to, use the funding in the ARPA. If you so choose to, it's your decision, not mine. That's my recommendation. And move it, grab the price here while it's available. And it's like, and the TA has seen information from the, along with the, would you call that a contract, TA, that was sent up with all that information? Is that a contract that I forwarded up to you with all that paperwork?
Oh, the pricing specs
Yeah,
that
all
came
the
through.
pricing on it
Yep.
with, from that particular vendor, the Wheel Coach. So it's like, again, like I said before, I'm not a finance guy, just a fire chief. And it's like, my recommendation would be to move the 113 from whatever's you got available. And if you decide that we wait till May, and I can just, the only thing I can maybe say is the price isn't going to go down. If anything, it's going to go up. My recommendation would be, if you get it available, use your ARPA funding and we can move it, get on the docket and get a contract signed and then get them locked in.
And then Chris, if you could ask a question, then Peg, you can take one after.
I just was wondering if signing the contract would lock the price in. Will it? I hope
In
so.
my experience, I've never paid more after we got a contract signed. They're signed in, everyone's locked in. I can research that a little bit by making a phone call tomorrow and just sending out an email to the group here and confirming that. But it's like my understanding, talking with the vendor, is that that's the price. We get it. If we sign it, we have it, and that's what we work off of.
And would it be 30 months from when you sign the contract?
No, they're the 20. It's 20 months.
20 months.
Yeah, but still, it's a lot, you know what I mean? You usually get them in 8 to 10.
Yeah.
In my experience, you know what I mean? So it's a lot either way you cut it, but it is what it is. There's things that you have control over and there's things that you don't. I don't have any control over those delivery dates. So it's like, that's what we're working with. And the committee worked really hard. Looked at a lot of the options and what we had. And this is the one that I felt most comfortable bringing forward. The other ones were too much money for what we were.
Sure. And then Peg, your next question?
So I'm not thrilled about using ARPA money. Chief, what do you have for ambulance reserves, the money that you've been collecting, and why aren't we tapping that first before we're tapping ARPA?
Well, again,
Again,
ambulance
that's
reserves and
available.
stabilization all require town meeting approval. So
Yeah, exactly.
the only thing that select board could vote on is ARPA. Other than that, it goes to town meeting.
Yep. If we go that route, you gotta go to town meeting. So that kicks the contract off till May and whatever the price increase is in May. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, when we get there.
All right, so Christian, question for you.
Yep.
Kind of sort of similar to what Concom did, where the town voted them a boat of money, and then they got the grant, and the money that the town voted, that money basically went right back into the CPA funds.
Mhm.
For this, if we do ARPA money and Chief continues to build his bank for ambulance receipts, can somehow that money come back to the town, you know, to be able to use that? Because I would just, yes, I understand the purpose of ARPA. I don't need any explaining done on that. But at the same time too, if there are alternate forms of money that can basically feed back in, and I know it might go to general fund, but is that an option to look at, or is that like a June question?
So the actual mechanism of how that would happen, I would ask June, but if it's 20 months out, chief, we pay when the ambulance arrives.
That's correct.
So if we had a commitment of funds, say from ARPA, and then we went to town meeting and actually requested to use the ambulance receipts reserved for the final payment, that would give us the ability to sign a contract. But that also would be contingent upon town meeting approving it. And if they
So-
didn't approve it, then you'd have to use the ARPA funds.
Right, so I think the short answer to your question, I think, Peg, is yes. So if we voted today to use ARPA funds, that gives Chief the ability to sign that contract and this to move forward. We
Yep.
could put on the town meeting an article to spend $113,000 worth of whatever capital planning or FinCom thinks is the best other fund, be it reserves or stabilization. And if that passes, when the bill comes in some respects, it would then free up the ARPA funds for something else, because that means the bill could be paid for by what town meeting passed originally and what town meeting passed in May. And
Okay.
that gives us back the ARPA funds to spend on something else. Otherwise, if the town meeting doesn't pass it, then we're then it's just a weird political spot where the town said, don't spend money on an ambulance that we actually are still going to get and spend money on. But I think an argument could be made to the town. The select board thought that it was important to move this forward. We think there are better funding sources for this. We ask you to use a better funding source. And if they don't, it just reduces the amount of ARPA funds we have for other things.
All right.
Well, and Chief, can you just put one clarification out there if you could about the cot? You were able to secure the cot, is that correct? Or the striker power, the power lift?
We were able to get that so that it missed 2 increases. They're holding that and they won't give us there was a increase in the end of October, and there's going to be one in February. We got it in, we kind of like made an arrangement with them that we would pay for that when billing came up, which would be sometime next year.
Right, and they were holding on to that.
They are, they're holding all that. It's like, and so we missed 2 increases. I know the February one was going to be 5%. I forget how much the October one was. So it's like, that's on that 62,000. So but we also have past practice with them. They support, that's the same vendor that we got with 682. They do our defibs in any of our the AEDs that we do. That's our vendor for that. So there's an established relationship there with that vendor. And it's like, and they locked it, decided that they're going to let us lock it in without even, we didn't give them any money, nothing. We just,
Right.
They said, we'll lock that in. And it's like, won't be, so sometime next year, they'll see an invoice, you know what I mean? Like, I think like April, May, like that, maybe whatever that financial period is for them. So it's going to be a while down the road.
So I just want to make it clear, Peg, because your question was, has it been ordered? There is a
Mhm.
part that has been ordered. So I just wanted to be, I wanted to be
Yeah.
fully transparent on that.
We
Yeah,
got the
yeah.
back wheel. We don't have anything else, but we got
That's
a wheel.
right. We got a wheel and a
No,
horn.
we're
We're
gonna,
good.
Got a
no, we're
wheel and a
gonna
horn.
stretch it and a system to load it in the back. We just need an ambulance for it to go in.
Right.
And for interoperability, other than being brand new, it mimics the current one that's in the other ambulance. So you go from one ambulance to the other, it's the same unit. Interoperability.
So if we take ARPA funds, if we do PEG math, and Scott agreed with me PEG math last time, minus if, once we vote on it, that we've got 561, 453 left, once you take out air handler, facilities, barn, road stuff, minus the 113 and change, it will leave us, we'll do round numbers, Peg likes round numbers, about 450,000 in ARPA funds if we vote tonight to use it, and then hopefully that money will somehow come back. Okay. All right.
Chief, I had 2 other things that would be really cool to have in the contract, although I think we should try to get the ambulance, but that Chief Shartner just had an issue where we ordered a police car, and then after ordering it, they said, no, we're just not going to do it anymore. And that cost us both more money and time. You're wondering if there's somehow a penalty if they decide that they're not going to get us one, so that any increase we have to pay to somebody else because they've just suddenly gotten out of the business is not doable. And in the same piece, they say about 20 months. I'm wondering what a way we could say that, like, that there's a cost reduction if we don't have it in, let's say, 24 or 26 months. I don't think the 20 months has to be a hard date. I just don't want to be sitting here 3 years from now and still not have an ambulance. Or again, 3 years from now, they say 3 years from now, we can't do it. And suddenly the next ambulance is $400,000 and we're $75,000 further in the hole than we are right now.
Yeah, no, I'll ask those questions tomorrow and send the answer through the TA. No, I have to be honest, I didn't have those discussions. I've never gone into that corner with a vendor before.
And I don't think until it happened to Chief Shartner last week, or last month, he ever had a police car just suddenly on order. They say, nope, sorry, not doing it.
I've never heard
We're in
that
a different
either.
universe than we've been in for the last 30 or 40 years, where these sort of negotiations and handshakes and other stuff just sort of get you down the path because of the formal approvals that take to get any government contract done.
Yep.
And Chief, could it be too, the ambulances are so like custom built that would be less likely to happen than like a vehicle that all police offices or police departments use?
It could be, Kristen. But all they usually do, they all have, to meet the KKK specs that the government puts out, that you need to have, this is the minimum. All it
Okay.
is kind of like you customize some compartments and storage, you know what I mean, a little
Oh, so you
bit.
could still lose
We
the
like this
body.
one here because
the
we've always
base.
had good luck with this compartment, like compartment A like this, but we want to change B on this rig, which it didn't work out on the last one. Usually you learn from the past ones. So it's like, you make it tweak it a little bit better every time. And it's like, it's a continuing process, but it's like, nope, good. Yep. I don't really know. It's like, it is kind of custom, but it's really, when you look at it, it's a pretty simple rig. So it's like, they did some stuff where they needed to have it for them and in our system. So it's like, we still have to, and we have to set it up so it passes the OEMS inspections and everything. So it's like, it is, yep.
Yep. And then as the select board, the three of us, I think if we end up voting on this tonight with the intent that we're hoping it comes out of another fund, we should be ready to figure out how we're going to sort of best explain at town meeting, you know, why it should come out of a different fund than the ARPA funds that,
Yeah.
that we control. So we're in some respects asking taxpayers to spend this out of, again, existing funds. I don't think it's going to come out of a taxpayer thing, I mean, extra taxes, but I have grave concerns that, again, 6 months now, 8 months from now, the wait could be 4 or 5 months longer, and the cost could be $30,000 or $40,000 more.
We'll know that
So
tomorrow.
I'm inclined to vote on this from ARPA funds today with, I think Peg's great idea that we go to town meeting and ask it. We work with FinCom and Capital, see if there's a better fund that they think the money should come out of.
Yep, agreed.
So Kristen, once we spend I guess we wouldn't really be spending the ARPA money.
We'd at least be designating ARPA funding. So if we do this, we can't spend that 113,000. I was gonna round it to 500, but 113,500 on anything else between now and whenever that money gets paid for by a different fund.
Okay,
But we have until the end of 24 to
Yeah.
obligate funds, so that could be re-obligated without a problem.
Well, the thing is too, we just need, if we do vote and decide to use ARPA money, that somebody needs to make a big sticky and put it in the ARPA budget to say, please don't spend $114,000.
Yeah.
You know, that we just kind of like tuck it in the kitchen drawer.
I would put it on the spreadsheet that we're using as sort of project 9 that was approved on, 11/28 with an asterisk next to it saying we're hoping to ultimately take this funds from another fund. So you're right, we don't, because we can't, June wouldn't let us spend it on another fund until we come up with something else. She is our good catch-all to make sure we don't do silly things like that.
would you like a motion?
Yes,
I would make a motion to use 113,500 from ARPA funds to fund the overage on the ambulance.
Actually, I think it's 113,091,
191, thank you. I
191.
was gonna say, bring that up.
How we were gonna make it 5.
I was gonna make it up just in case there's some rounding stuff when we go to actually
Okay,
sign the
yeah,
contract. We
well,
have to come
thank
back for a
you.
few more pennies.
Yep.
All right, so you want, so how much is it?
113,500.
Okay. Yeah, sure, Scott, make me screw up my peg math. Yeah, I'll second that.
I think it is sort of for the minutes that the intent that the select board will then ask, or Kristen, you might write to Capital and FinCom that we're hoping to talk to them about some other funds for this to come from for town meeting warrant article.
Sure. And you did
Uh,
put this through the capital process chief as well. So that's already on their radar.
Okay,
It's on
good.
there radar. It is.
I think we're ready to vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone Eye.
There you go,
Thank-
chief.
Thank you for your support. TA,
Yes,
good to see you. Take care.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
I
You
think.
set with
thanks.
me?
Yes, I think we're all set, Chief Clark.
All right. Have a good evening. Everyone stay safe.
You
I
too.
think we're ready for Chief Shartner's monthly presentation is next on the agenda.
Just a message for Igor. Igor, you'll be right after Chief Shartner.
Hi, good evening again.
Eric?
All right, so the month of October, we handled 859 calls for service, 6 cases including criminal charges, 11 motor vehicle crashes, 5 with injuries, 80 motor vehicle stops, 65 citations issued. October for call wise was relatively quiet. It was actually a pretty good month. And happy to say that over the 2 days that the town celebrated Halloween, the police department participated in 4 events within the town over those 2 days. We finished up the school safety training, regional crisis training with Tohoto and Berlin Memorial School in October as well. We put the finishing touches on it. As you see, Sergeant Goulding attended a school safety summit in October. It was actually a parent from Newtown that was the main speaker for that event. Let's see, radios, antennas have been ordered. Kristen and I have spoken with Lee, and that's it. They've been ordered. No timetables yet. He said his crew does work through the winter. So as soon as they're in, they're gonna be ready to go up. The drone unit, I spoke with Stevens Family Foundation today. I need to send them a spreadsheet tomorrow for cost. They will be sending a check to the town of Berlin for the drone unit. See, Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, as you know, we put up the stop signs on Carter Street and Highland Street, that little section there. We then took them down and looked at the data again. There's a 2.94% increase in traffic coming south down Highland into Carterville. When I say 2.94%, still, I think over the course of 28 days, there's a potential of, I think, 9 cars that we could have stopped for speeding. So we did not vote to put the stop signs back up at the last meeting. Want to give us some more time, watch the data. And also we're talking about some potential traffic trays versus stop signs in the future. So that will be rediscussed on December 7th. I'll pull the data off for these speed signs, and if it stays under that 3%, I think the stop signs may be a thing of the past and not go back up. The one on Carter Street coming up to Highland and Carter is remaining. We're not taking that one down. See, Officer Tim Andre attended 1 week SWAT training in New Jersey in October. They go down there for their yearly 1 week training and it's always a success. And like I said, he spent 5 days down there training morning till night. Our 2022 cruiser order is in the works with McGovern Auto. Currently waiting on lights and some equipment. The car is in. I have not physically seen it. I have only been told that the car is on the lot They just recently purchased a building in Boylston, or a business in Boylston, and that's where they outfit the cars. So I asked that the car goes to Boylston so we can actually get our eyes on it. So I'm optimistic that it's in. I would just like to see it and see the crayon on the windshield that says Berlin.
Eric, you gotta ask for like a proof of life picture, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, well, I want to physically see it because there's a lot of great cars out there. So I want to
Just bring a Post-it note, write Berlin on it, just put it on
Yep.
one of the cars.
Yeah.
There you go.
This one's no ours.
Yeah,
Dibs.
so I emailed them a week ago. I've yet to hear back. So of course I know with the holiday, maybe either they're busy or the person's on vacation or whatnot. So I will be following up tomorrow with a couple more phone calls until I get an answer. Yeah, and I met with capital planning as well the other night too for potential purchases for next year. So, you know, it's looking optimistic, doing my budget, and it's looking pretty. I'm trying to keep it within that 2.5, but with mandated training, it's going to be close.
Chief, do you want to mention the cameras?
Yeah, so the cameras, I'm gonna call them the public safety building cameras and not the police department cameras, because we cover the fire bays, the vestibule in the town hall, as well as the town hall offices. So we had an issue in August where it's almost like a little mini computer up on the wall had basically burnt out. It's been running since 2017 and it finally quit. So the company came in and they said, well, there's really not much we can do for you. Your software is not supported anymore. You purchased the stuff in 2017 and we never had maintenance agreements and we never upgraded the cameras. So I think I gave it to Kristen, I think it's what, 4,700
Mhm.
to get us up to speed and get us till next December 2023. I was going to put it in for request for next July 1st, you know, for a budget item, but it's really something we should probably get fixed sooner rather than later. Because if we have one more failure, then we lose our camera system in the building. And that
And we
includes our
tried-
room, sally ports, garages, whatnot, so. They said it was a shocker to me, but the guy spent about 45 minutes looking on my computer trying to find support for the version we had, and there was no support. It's been updated every year, it gets updated, so we're 5 years behind.
And I was going to add, we did try to apply for a grant to Maya. They have a risk management grant. They are not interested in funding cameras because apparently everybody applies for cameras. They were interested in giving Fred some forestry headsets and a fleet maintenance schedule, which was very nice of them. And capital, this doesn't meet the threshold for capital because it's under $10,000. So that's where we get a little stuck.
So if we wanted to do it now, it's ultimately going to be a reserve fund transfer or a year-end transfer from a fund that didn't spend all their money, correct?
It could be ARPA. I know no one likes that anymore, but
Well, you know what? We go the same road as we did for Chief's ambulance. Earmark it, put it aside, and then go back to the town in May.
ask
Yeah,
for
for me, this
May.
is not a capital item that deserves town meeting stuff. I think this, for me, feels like a reserve fund is for unintended things that have come up that are not big enough to be capital. And so I'm assuming that this would be a combination, is that not only would we do a potentially a $4,700 one now, or next week, if this is too big to have not been called out agenda item. And then this will be something you'll add to your budget, sort of as an ongoing maintenance contract for cameras in the building. So we do the annual upgrades.
Yeah, so I'm figuring it's probably about $900 a year, basically for support. And, you know, which I gotta talk to the company about, but they said, basically gave me a price at $4,700 and you'll be good through December 2023.
Right. And I did just put this on the ARPA list, just so that we could discuss it. I know we're jumping ahead in the
Okay.
agenda, but we are covered from an open meeting law standpoint
Okay.
there. I just
Good.
think I grabbed Chief while he was here.
Yep, which we often do, you know, is when someone is here, we do their other agenda items, they have to sit to the end. This might have been ultimately a good fiscal decision for the town, because if it's $900 a year and we've gone 5 or 6 years without needing this, that's more than $4,700, which we're spending right now.
True.
But I don't know, Chris, Peg, questions?
No, something like this, I mean, it needs to be done for the safety of not only, you know, everybody in the building, but anybody brought into the building, and it's, you know, yeah, is it frustrating that this was missed and no one was watching and it broke? Absolutely. So that needs to be put in place to make sure, you know, and it's not just you, Eric, it's everybody. That, we ran into this problem with June software. Oh, it wasn't supported anymore, you know, and she just kind of like limped along until we could figure something out, so.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly what we're doing now. We're limping along. We have one computer that will, that we can access the videos, but we actually have a laptop from 12 years ago that's actually running the cameras right now that we had in the storage unit that we pulled out. So that's kind of like in the replacer. Remember that 4,700 is only to replace the, you know, upgrade the software. I'm still waiting on a price for the part to put it back up on the wall. Supplying the supply chain is making it near impossible to even get a price on, because they don't even know when they can get it. So right now the laptop is running fine. We have full function from the sergeant's computer with it. But it's just the software that's my main focus right now.
And so the $4,700 is only soft, so you would still be running on a 12-year-old laptop?
Yes.
That I assume is then running on an operating system that is no longer supported by its manufacturer and is unlikely to survive our safety and security standards?
Well, no, it's not hooked up into it's only in-house. It's not hooked up to the outside.
If that laptop happened to die, would there be anyone who could get parts for it?
I actually have another one with it as well. There's two. The patrol PCs we got back in 2014. Those are that's what they replaced. So I've actually got a backup to the old backup.
Eric, do you have any type of guesstimate on a cost? Because if we go for a transfer and we ask for 4,700, I, you know, like Scott's round math. See, Scott is starting to do peg math. He rounds. You know, for whatever needs to get on the wall besides duct tape.
Yeah, I'm guessing between 1,200 and 1,400. We're basically buying a mini computer to put up on the wall.
So maybe what we do then, Chief, is I'll work with you to put a reserve fund transfer together once you get that price, and we can do it all at once.
Yeah, my only issue is that it's actually started in August. So we're already going on over 3 months and not still being able to get a price, because they still can't get their handle on one. Yeah, remember our camera system is from 2000. It's been upgraded. Some cameras have been replaced, some haven't. So our issue is finding a piece of equipment that's going to run with 21-year-old equipment. So without spending, you know, 6 figures redoing the whole building, you know, we're trying to find equipment to run old lines.
How many cameras do you have?
Oh boy, it's got to be 18 or 20 between the whole building, every cell, booking room, evidence, backside of the building, all around the building.
I'm getting increasingly reluctant to spend any money on this. And that if it really is trying to connect to a 20-year-old system, that also is going to fall apart any moment. I'd rather, in some respects, try to find a new camera system, go through capital planning, you know, have something for town meeting, and do it right. Because if we spend this 5,000 or 6,000 on a single camera and think that ultimately other parts of the system start failing because they're also old, this becomes a piecemeal piece that will also be hard to support.
Yeah, I mean, even when we put the cameras, I think the 2 cameras that we put upstairs in the town hall, I think that was around 14,000. Just those 2 cameras. So
Well, the trouble is though, that the safety, I mean, if there was some kind of an incident, you really need to have cameras that work now.
Yeah.
So the process of going through, capital planning and waiting till town meeting, that all will take time. Is this something that we need to move on at this point?
We have,
I mean, you know, my personal opinion is that I think the system could easily run another 5 years. You know, I'm not really sure why we're not in, you know, I'm sure we're gonna start going towards wireless systems, you know, in the future. I mean, we are there now, just not in public safety per se. You know, the wiring we have, there's some ground issues that go out to the fireside. So we have black and white video. We don't have color video. You know, where we should have color, you know, we're probably on like maybe like 480 out in the bays, you know, where other offices are up to 1080. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, I think that's a 3 or 4 year plan out to really look at the camera systems and see where we're going to go with it. It's tough to say, you know, no matter what we buy today, 6 months from now, something new is going to be out. We wait 6 months, by the time it comes in, something else new is going to be out.
and
I mean,
And
I'm not into Band-Aids, but I think in this situation, we need a lot of time and a lot of quotes and bring in several vendors. There's a lot of vendors out there that do this.
and then right now you're just down that one camera.
Well, no, we're down that one computer module, the software. That's the software that we need to run the cameras. We need to upgrade the software, and like I said, I'm still waiting to hear on a price from Galaxy on the little computer that goes up on the wall. Right now it's plugged into an old laptop that's functioning fine. But like I said,
Okay.
you know, maybe rather than,
So-
you know, keep running the laptop, which is fine. And then in the future, you know, start exploring a newer system.
So $4,700 gets you sort of the updated software that will run on the laptop, even though it's a fairly old laptop.
Yeah.
The mini computer would mean that you wouldn't need to use the laptop, but that your system is fully functional with just $4,700.
Yes, yes.
What about the 12 to 1400, Eric, to get it up on the wall? Do you need that?
I mean, I'm not actually asking for that. If I, you know, until they come out with, give me a solid answer. You know, we've dealt with this one company since I think 2017, and they're contracted by Neshoba Regional Dispatch, and they're excellent. I think they're just trying to figure out how they can, you know, keep it going, you know, get the right, you know, because I actually, you know, I grabbed the model number off, Googled it. I figured I could get one on Amazon, or, you know, buy one off the internet, and there's nothing. There's nothing. You know, it's 5 years old, so, you know, they maybe probably stopped making them 4 years ago, or who knows, maybe we got as a leftover in 2017, and it was really a 2015 model. But I've searched high and low on the internet for this particular component and cannot find it.
So I think we need to make a decision now. Just as far as the smaller amount of money. If Kristen, if you wanted to pursue the reserve fund transfer, that'd be fine. Otherwise, I'm willing to make a motion to use ARPA funds.
I think I am more comfortable directing Kristen to do this as a reserve fund transfer than I am in ARPA funds at the moment.
Agreed.
I think I'm fine with a motion to say we encourage her to do it. It would support a reserve fund transfer, so that if she comes back to us with a reserve fund transfer, like, why did you ask for ARPA funds? But I think that I don't think this is, I think this is what reserve fund transfers were designated for, unexpected repairs.
That's fine. Do you want to make that motion, and I'll second it?
Sure, I move that we direct Kristen to create a reserve fund transfer for the $4,700 so that we can upgrade the camera software in town offices.
Second.
Peg, are you okay with this? Do you have
Yep.
questions? Okay.
Nope.
We'll vote on it. Hawkins, aye.
Keith, aye.
Stone eye.
And then Peg, Chris, do you have other questions for Chief Gardner?
Go ahead, Chris. I've got a couple.
I'm all set.
If I could, Peg. Chief, where are we at with staffing and hiring?
Our last part-timer just started. Well, when I say just started, he got released this past week to work shifts, so that's gonna take a little bit of a burden off. One in the academy gets out, graduates December 30th, 28th or 30th. So he'll be ready to go right after that. He's been working with us. And then Jacob gets out of the academy around March 24th, followed by probably 8 weeks of field training. But we're doing better. We're doing much better right now.
And then what are the type of things that like don't get done when you're not fully staffed? Like what are things what risks are we taking by not being fully staffed?
One of the biggest things obviously is that you want 2 officers working every shift. You don't want officers working by themselves. You want 2 on every call. And you know, another thing, a number 1 complaint in town, motor vehicle. And that's the one thing that gets put aside. You know, there's administrative work, office work, court paperwork, calls that have to be answered. And you know, we just don't have the presence on the road that we should, or that we once did have.
Is the new union contract that might have us not reappoint some part-timers going to cause any staffing problems?
You know, I don't anticipate anything. I think it's pretty clear to everybody, you know, what's in the contract and what's coming. You know, we've come to a point with over the last year with police reform and being a post state, there is requirements that are beyond the town's requirements. And, you know, like the hours that we asked officers to work, I mean, 56 of the first 56 hours of training. You know, I'm mandated to train everybody now 56 hours a year. It used to be 32. So, you know, that's what I was talking about earlier. I'm trying to keep my budget, you know, within the 2.5. But now I'm up to minimum 56 hours. You know, you start having specialty positions like school resource officer, that's like another 80 hours a year on top of the 56, you know, because they still need to be certified every year, still need to attend their conferences, 1-week conferences, 1-day conferences. You know, it's a lot. It's a lot taken in. I mean, I've sat every day for a couple hours looking at the budget and I keep on tweaking it. I'm like, oh, that's right, this officer has to do this next year. It's mandated. And, it's simple as 8 hours, but, you know, I want to make sure everything's budgeted for and I'm not coming back in May, you know, asking for money because I didn't budget enough to make sure everybody was post-certified or trained to be certified.
Go ahead, Peg.
So, Eric, first of all, thank you for getting the animal control report in. That was pretty awesome. So appreciate that. My couple questions. Where is the animal control officer in terms of all the training that she needs to complete by the end of next month?
Yeah, so she's well aware. She has turned in some certificates to the state. So her hours are getting up there. I still need to talk to the state. Apparently, I can't quote me on this, but apparently 40% of ACOs across the state are in the same boat. So we're not alone in this issue. But I do want to reach out to the lady at the state who was very prompt to get back to me, which I was very impressed with. But I just want to make sure that, you know, that we're still going to be on the up and up, you know, and see what they're giving them for time. Apparently COVID really did screw up the whole training across the state for them.
Second question on the report. So as law guy, if you ever had to take one of those written reports into court and either use it as a piece of defense or a piece for the prosecution, would they hold up in the current format that they're in? And I'm going somewhere with this. I'm just curious to your answer.
I'm sorry, you lost me. I don't know what guy.
So the handwritten forms that come in from the animal control officer, if you had to take it into court, could it be considered a legitimate document, or will someone just see it as, hey, this is just written on a piece of paper. Kristen was doodling one afternoon and she wrote it up and handed it to you?
The way I see it as a field note, and there is a proper way to put them in format.
Okay, so then that leads perfectly to my second question. Thanks for the setup. There is a website out there, hold please, that has a list. You notice how I stall when I try to look for things? Here, I hope you can see my screen. These are the forms for all the animal control here. So I know that there's some issue with using the laptop, but is there any way that, like the animal control intake form can be printed out and handed it to her? We've had dog bites. I just want to be sure that the town is protected in the event something ever comes up and somebody says, show me the piece of paper, and you walk in with an approved form and not something that I'm scribbling in my notebook.
Correct. Correct. Yes, there's that is another thing I want to get done once this budget season's done is print out basically packets, and that's what every month is packets.
Okay.
No
All
more.
right.
The field notes are great, but those field notes are for you to hold on to, and there is forms the state does require. And as we're
Okay.
on a path for certification / accreditation, a lot of things are going to have to change here.
Okay.
It's not me, it's not the board, it's the requirement of the certification. Things have to be done exactly the way every other town does them and certified across the Commonwealth, not just a Berlin way.
Yeah, because unfortunately, there seems to be more and more emails that are coming through with animal complaints. Whether it's a dog running through somebody's yard that, doesn't belong in Berlin, or it's somebody's dog attacking somebody's chicken, or it's somebody's dog attacking somebody. Again, in a court of law, I just want to make sure that Berlin is protected by the forms that should be used and need to be used, compared to, I'm just going to write it on this random piece of paper and give it to Abby, and Abby will upload it because Abby's awesome. Okay. Yeah, so maybe next time when you come back, if you can give us an update on, here's your forms, for her to fill out.
And so on the dogs running around that are dogs that are not Berlin dogs, but are in Berlin properties, the notes of the ACO talk about like they're frustrated on where to go to support the resident who's being harassed by the dogs. Is there anything? I don't want to get too into details, but from a high level, are there things we can do to support situations where it's crossing town borders, or we don't have a leash law? What are the things we can be doing to help the Berlin resident out?
I mean, I think the biggest issue is that we don't have a leash law.
Right.
That's the biggest issue. The secondary issue is that the neighboring town hasn't had an ACO in a while, and it doesn't look like that ACO is coming back. So unless you have another neighboring town ACO that's working with you, nothing's going to get accomplished.
I mean, we did, our ACO did reach out to the Board of Health
Yep.
in the adjacent town just to see if she could make any headway there.
And it looks like reach out to other places as a state agency. It looks like she's reached out to as well. I think we're trying. I want to make sure that our ACO is also feeling supported, because it does seem to be a hole in regulations that is allowing dogs to, in some respects, seriously bother and enjoy the livelihood, the enjoyment of the property of someone who lives here in town.
Yeah.
So Eric, I have a question for you. I'm going to share my screen again. Hang on. Maybe I'm going to share my screen. On the interweb, it says that Massachusetts has a statewide leash law where a dog must be on a leash when out in public unless the animal is in a designated city dog park, where owners or walkers may have their pets run free. The fine for owners of these unleashed dogs in public is $100. So if Berlin doesn't have a leash law, but Massachusetts has one, does that give us any leg up on this?
I honestly, I wouldn't know. I know that law is in effect. I know recently I tried using a state law and it didn't actually apply to Berlin because we're a town. It applied to cities. And we're a town, so that's the other thing too. We're gonna make sure that that's not a city law, and it's a town and city law.
Yeah.
There's a lot to look into it. Believe me, I just went through it, and to my amazement, they do actually put out these laws that don't cover everybody. This may cover towns that take no action on leashed or unleashed animals. They don't have either.
All right. Now, I was just curious where Massachusetts has a statewide law, who wins, Berlin or Massachusetts?
We can look into it a little. it has, like Chief said, it would have to make sure it applies to us. And also there are some weird state laws that we have to adopt in order for them to apply locally.
Oh, no
So
kidding.
There
Okay.
are, like, OPEB. Just one. That came to mind immediately, sorry. But no, we can look into it for you.
Well, it does sound like a frustrating situation, but it does sound like that both thought and energy is going into it. I hope there's a resolution at some
Yeah.
point, but you know, does sound like it is getting the attention of the right people in town to find a solution.
I just want to say that until you get any kind of special paperwork for the ACO, I do not mind the way they are, just so that we get them.
Right.
You know, I just like being able to see, what she's working on. And that's basically because she reports to you, but we have to decide if she is going to be our ACO in Berlin or not.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other questions for the chief?
Hey, Chief, nice job on Saturday collecting all the toys up
Oh,
at
yeah,
Cabela's.
600 plus toys, I thought I read.
Yeah, I mean, that goes 100% to Kevin Colamy. He started that years ago and does it with a passion every year and gets the volunteers to come out, and they just do an amazing job. And big shout out to Jersey Mike's. They're not open yet, but they're a training staff, and they brought us all sandwiches. So, and that was a police and fire event.
Yep.
It started off as a police event years ago, but it's nice having the fire department there as well. It's a nice public safety event to get the toys for the kids.
Yeah, it was. It was nice. It felt nice dropping off stuff because it's at this time of season, it should always be about the kids. So
Yeah, and the weather was good. It was about 20 degrees warmer than we've ever done it, so we can't complain.
okay.
Well, great. Thank you, chief.
All right.
I think we
Thanks,
can.
Eric.
Hi, Eric. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. I think Igor, you can be promoted, and we're ready to talk about Verizon cell towers. And then for those in the audience, just after we're done with Igor, if you, we did skip over general public comments. And so if you have a comment, you can raise your hand as we're done this and we can recognize you. Hello and welcome.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for bearing with us as we went through our other agenda items.
It's all right. How you doing? No, I'm just here to answer your questions. I guess I sent the email. I don't know if you guys read the email, and that's pretty much the gist of it. I mean, I can repeat what I said. Basically, we're just looking for the new tower in town, and generally, I mean, pretty wide area. We open to options. There's two parcels I kind of like identified that. I mean, I drove by and kind of like, walked by and like looked at the area. So those two seem to have good elevation and good line of sight and good enough screening, I guess, not to be in neighbors' backyards. I'm sure there are more properties that town owns that might be considered, but that's basically just general inquiry, like first inquiry to see if there's anything you guys would consider to list to us. That's about it.
Chris Pegg?
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm not quite sure what to ask.
Okay, go for it, Peg.
So these locations on Ball Hill and Boylston Road, obviously Ball Hill's pretty long and so is Boylston Road. Obviously heading towards Route 70 into Boylston or Clinton. Where exactly on these roads are you thinking of putting the tower?
I included the MBLU, like map and lot numbers for the
Okay.
parcels. So one was basically if you're driving from Clinton and then it's like across Route 62 from the big development there. What do you call it?
Highland Commons?
No, the Woodlands, but like
Oh.
Woodlands a little bit far
Oh, in
north. So
Clinton.
basically, if you go directly south from Woodlands and then you go to Route 62 and then cross it, there's like a big field. You can get off Route 62 and kind of like go through the big field up the hill. So that was one of the parcels. I mean, I don't even know how to identify. There's no houses nearby, just a
Right.
big parcel of land. But again, it's a south of Route 62. And then if you draw a direct line to the north, you'll hit woodland. So basically that's the parcel. And the second one is Maplewood Farm. So the directly south from Maplewood Farm, like a riding area. There's like a big hill over there that's also town owned. That's the one off Ball Hill Road.
Is there any cost, or what would be the cost to the town to have these installed?
Should be zero. I mean, the only thing we would need is, I mean, anything we do usually with landlords, your cost is zero. I mean, we sign the lease. It's just the cost of you using the attorney to negotiate the lease to the extent that you want to. And that's basically it.
And a
Any-
typical lease agreement is how long?
We prefer to have a long term. The standard we would like to sign is 20 years. I understand. I'm actually 25. I understand that some towns read the mass law the way that you cannot sign lease longer than 10 years. I mean, we understand that. So there's RFPs that have been issued by municipalities throughout the Commonwealth, and they usually issued for 10-year periods. If you can sign the longer lease, that's fine. If general counsel determine that's okay, or if not, 10 years is understandable because that's how some of the towns interpret the mass law. So that's basically. I mean, we would want it to have it at least for 10 years just to recoup the investment, the capital expenditures and stuff like that.
And then it is fairly standard in the leases to give our public safety departments access to the tower to put our radio equipment on it to improve. emergency
For
services.
me, yeah, for municipal and is a condition of approval. So usually there's understanding between carriers and municipalities that we will provide space on the tower free of charge. I mean, we will not pay for the antennas, but you guys can install on the RAD that we will agree upon. Because most of the, I mean, not most, but a lot of the towns use us for the backup service anyway. So that's beneficial for everybody.
And so if I was understanding some of the process stuff is that, I assume we're sort of interested in it. The next step in some respects is a little bit of negotiation with the town on the details of the lease, although I bet I'm sure many of them are fairly boilerplate. And then obviously going to our ZBA and planning boards to make sure that the actual design of the tower and location tower meets our zoning rules and our planning stuff as well, because I don't think our votes would overrule whatever they might have
Yeah,
to
I
say.
mean, the next step would be basically you tell me, I mean, what parcel would you consider? Maybe there are some, deed restrictions on some of them that I'm not aware of. Maybe there's something slate for something else. You guys don't want to do it. Ultimately, the next step is town's desire to lease.
Yep.
Once that's established, we will get you a set of plans. Like we have a site walk, it tells, okay, this is a parcel we'd consider. We will get you a set of plans, like a lease exhibit, kind of like a level of drawings, not structure, not like construction drawings, but just kind of like schematic, where we're going to be, what it's going to look like, et cetera, et cetera. And then you guys would require to issue RFP because the state law. So then we go out to bid, assuming there's no other bidders. I mean, if bid goes out, sometimes other tower companies, third-party tower companies might be interested in it as well, because Verizon's interested. They might be okay. They might be bidding as well. Assuming we win the RFP, then we start negotiating the lease, and also looking at the zoning and and planning and everything else, whatever's needed. We have our federal permitting and NEPA, SHPO, etc. FAA, I don't think there's airport nearby that is a concern, but we still need to run all our regulatory stuff. But yeah, that's basically it. And looking at the lease, and once we have a lease and we have permitting approval, we just we go to construction, and then that's basically.
And I assume that an added tower would all come with 5G services, because like right now, Berlin doesn't qualify for at-home 5G internet services free for any internet, any cell provider.
I mean, whatever new we installing is, I mean, at this point, it's even past 5G. I mean, it depends on the locale. I mean, it's, you know, it's called differently, but, you know, I mean, it's new generations already coming. So by the time, like I'm talking to you right now, I mean, even if everything falls into place, it's probably 2024 project. I mean, given everything in, so by that time, I mean, I'm sure that'd be 5G or beyond.
Go ahead, Kristen, you had a question?
I was just gonna say, there's a couple of things. I did send this around to the department heads in the town just to see if we could get a little bit of feedback, and a couple of things came through. The lot that sits off the cliff near the 495 North off ramp is in tax title, but the town doesn't actually own it. And it would only be accessible through a right of way if given from Gates Pond Road, which my understanding is that a private way? Is that why he's saying that we would need to give
Say
an
it again?
accessibility?
Say it again.
Yeah,
Gates
but that's neither Ball Hill or Boylston. That's on the other side of
No,
town.
but
So
this
are
is-
you
but
looking at
there's-
that for an option?
Or-
Yeah, he's
yeah,
looking at, we have
another
other
one.
lots that might be high altitude in town that might be beneficial to look at. And that's by the 495 on ramp. And so it would definitely provide extra services for people driving up and down 495, whether or not it's still in a spot that is.
Is that the exit of 62, like 62
Yeah,
exit?
yep,
Yeah.
yep, the 62 exit.
That's
There's a-
why I got confused, because I had that in my head near Highland Commons. But I've also been informed there are already cell tower antennas over at Highland Commons.
Right,
There is, yeah, like, I mean, we have a site of, I mean, a little bit south of
Yeah.
495 of that off ramp. So maybe that's what you're referring to.
Uh,
There's an existing site there. So ultimately, any other parcel I would be looking at would probably be further west from there,
Further
at least like
west.
a half a mile to a mile west. Like say Berlin Orchard is kind of like good spot. That's the closest I want to go to the highway.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then like anything closer, we already have a site there. So it'd
Yeah.
be like,
Right.
I mean, a bit too close. So,
Um,
but anywhere along 62, starting at Berlin Orchards and probably all the way down to, I mean, if you make it like a straight line towards the Maplewood farm, I mean, anything that stretch basically kind of like elongated oval, I'd say would be fine. Then we have a site on 83 Coburn Road, the junk car yard. So there's a site there. So that's kind of like, that's like what it's the only thing we have basically. So anything, I guess, east and anything west, more like southeast and southwest from that side, that's basically two areas. So when I was talking about that area that borders Clinton, that was one of them. And then the second area would be basically along 62, just basically throughout the town.
I mean, my feeling is that I would love to figure out a way to explore some of this, and that these cell services are sort of what makes a town livable and not livable these days. And that I would love to sort of get, in some respects, the chief's opinion of like, because if we had a place to put another emergency services antenna up on a tower, which one of these two would help them out the most? And I'd love to hear a little bit, potentially an email just to the planning commission to get a sense of, you know, do they have if they had a preference and could choose which one. I'd almost limit it to these two unless someone came up with another town-owned plot that made a lot of sense in that area. Like, so that we can have one boy, if like, you know, everyone agreed that one of these two is just better from a town standpoint, that we then sort of pursue a little bit more down that path.
Yeah, I mean, I can throw some things out there, but like, I mean, there's a school, right? And right in the middle of this, like Berlin Memorial School, but I know it could be a very sensitive issue for the parents and, perceived health risk. I mean, there's huge, I mean, it's a big parcel. You can go in the back somewhere near a ball field, but it's not really screened. It's not really a lot of vegetation around. There's houses nearby. There's transfer station there as well, right? But I mean, that's something we cannot really build. I mean, for the environment, sometimes Verizon is really strict on environmental. aspect of whatever we do. So like if we do like a phase 1, they might say, okay, I need phase 2 because it's transfer station. Well, you guys probably not going to sign off on a phase 2 because it's, we have to disclose to the state whatever we find. So things like that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys are open to like a school or something else. I mean, in some towns, I mean, we are on schools in some towns. I mean, we are on the athletics fields in the high schools. We are, somewhere in the back in middle schools, like in the wooded areas. That's something to explore. Just been doing it for a while. I mean, usually towns are very sensitive to schools just for the concerns of residents, and that's something we can only acknowledge. So usually we prefer to be somewhere in the back that nobody really sees us, nobody, out of sight, out of mind. But if that's something would work, that's definitely a possibility as well. So basically anything along 62 and southeast towards that Maplewood Farm, basically it's a long stretch of town's property. I mean, anything we can find would work for us.
Right. And I'd love to figure out a way to get, again, a couple of plots with the sort of least amount of town staff work to come up with something. And so I don't want to do potentially an exhaustive thing. If we can find something really quick, Danny might have something more to say. He offered the option that you brought, Kristen, that's not, but if he knew sort of the area looking, maybe he has something. And again, I would sort of try to get some quick feedback. Not final decisions, not final votes, but sort of gut feelings from a couple of folks. Because, if ZBA or planning are like, no way, no, how do we ever want any more cell towers in town? I don't think we want to have a giant fight. Again, I think it's a great benefit. But I'd love to hear other feedback before we did more.
I think, don't forget, you're gonna have to call in Concom too, because if you're talking Maplewood, then you're talking, I'm gonna guess Mount Pisgah area, which is all conservation, and I can see the battle that you're going to have with that. So you're definitely going to need to pull them in. And then Igor, you hit on it. It was one of my questions. While you were chatting, I was Googling around, and there was just page after page of health risks. So I think that that's something that would need to be, maybe that's a Board of Health, not Berlin Board of Health, but maybe Neshoba Board of Health, that you have to talk to and find out information on that. I'm just trying to think of all the discussions that we're going to have with a bunch of people before the town says, yep, go. And does this require a town vote, or is it planning, ZBA, Concom, we sign off on it? Is it a done deal?
I mean, you guys usually negotiate the lease. Usually we don't really, unless it's a town meeting situation when you designated a parcel for certain use. You're usually not involved in zoning or permitting per se. As far as health risk, again, we all up to standards of whatever FCC calls for us. And during the permitting, we provide independent reports and we do actual studies. We provide everything that's needed. We can only provide what we can provide. If people have their own opinion about things, we cannot change that. We are up to federal standards, and usually when those things are installed, the maximum I ever saw was like 3% of maximum exposure. So we can put like 30 more of those; it will still be in compliance. But we can only adhere to whatever standards we are provided. So that's basically, and municipalities are instructed to not deny based on health risk because it's not really in compliance with the laws. But again, municipalities can deny based on whatever appearance and stuff like that. And again, you are the one leasing to us. So if you're on the lease us in the first place, nothing we can do. So yeah, it's a lot of players involved. I can talk to anybody. We can answer any questions. But ultimately, just make sure you guys are on board. And if you guys have a huge fight on your hands and nobody wants to do it, I understand. It happens.
I think, Scott, your approach is right to do a little bit of digging, talk to Dennis on some sites, maybe just contact the chairs of a couple of those committees. I can look into the lease. I have a feeling, because it's town-owned property, that it will require a town meeting vote. If it was on private land, that would be different. But I also would echo, Peg, some of your concerns. And I do know that people worry if you keep it away from, like Igor was saying, the residential neighborhoods,
Right.
schools, that would be helpful probably in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, especially with this, I envision not a huge presentation, but a presentation of something, whether it's a presentation to go to the boards, ZBA, planning, Concom, and talk to them, and then eventually to the town, because I'm picturing in my head the stream of people that are just going to keep coming up with question after question. So, Igor, is there anything that you've done with prior towns that we could leverage, that you've said, hey,
yeah.
here's a presentation?
Yeah, I mean, I can figure out, like, I'm trying to see what the closest neighboring town.
So I'm thinking, why reinvent the wheel if you already have some of it that may help to skippy this along?
Yeah, I mean, I can there's a lot of municipal towers, in the area. I need to figure out what's closest I can give you guys as an example, maybe a few examples. I'm trying to think about if anything recent that I've done in Mass.
My experience in a previous community was kind of the opposite. It was a tower going on private land. So that battle was really fought out in the ZBA and the planning board and trying to get the appeals process, because it didn't need the town, meeting or board of selectmen approval.
We usually prefer to go to town first, because if we actually give money to the town, running sometimes seems easier, because if the town is interested in getting this approved, it usually happens a little bit smoother. Of course, if town meetings and water is required and it's watered down, there's nothing we can do. And then my next step would be look at the private parcels, and my justification going to zoning after that will be, well, town doesn't want to lease to us on their property, then I have to, it's a prohibition of service. Effectual, so I have to lease from private property. I still have to go back to zoning on a parcel that's not private, town owned. So I have to pay rent to private party, but still doing the same thing. So I usually like to start with the municipalities, because I think it's more beneficial from everybody. But I understand sometimes it actually doesn't work that way. Sometimes it's easier to go to the private property, but I'll at least have to try. So that's the approach we have. But I'll look at the list of what I have. I'm trying to remember. I haven't done anything recently, but I'm sure I have something. And I'll ask colleagues of mine, anything in the town nearby that I might be missing, and I'll send you some examples. I'm just trying to think right now, and I cannot remember. Monday nights, so maybe just my brain. So, but I'll send you something via email I'm actually renewing installation in Canton right now, but it's not a tower, it's a water tank. And I'm trying to figure out, but I'll send you something this week. I'll think of something. I'll send you a few examples this week. We are on police stations. We are, behind the town halls. We're in actual town halls. We're inside the Newton City Hall, things like that. But I'll try to find something closer to you guys, so you can kind of, maybe even drive to it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor. Stay in touch, and I think you and Kristen will have email conversations, and Kristen, just keep us posted where things are at.
Will
Okay,
do.
so at this point, you guys waiting for me to give you examples, or
Some examples, and then we're going to look for some other properties that, including those,
Okay.
and get some feedback from other folks in town, so we get a sense of the
Okay.
political landscape that will exist in town.
Okay, all right, I'll be in touch. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
And then as we transition to the town administrator report, as if there's anyone in the audience who wants to do general public comments, let us know by raising your hand. And then, Kristen, if you want to just start in the town report, and I'll keep my eyes open for hands.
Sure. So many thanks to everyone who worked on the budget, especially June and Amy. The packages actually went out Thursday, November 10th. They were out early. So we had our 2 kickoff meetings on November 15th at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. We got most of our department heads between the 2 of those meetings, and some board and committee members as well. We also got a joint letter out to the regional school district from the select board and the FinCom with kind of parameters for their FY24 budget. And budget requests are due November 30th, and FinCom starts meeting December 14th with departments. And I know the first two are fire and school. Some good news, we actually worked with the Economic Development Committee to complete a sponsorship agreement with Cabela's. That allows Cabela's to put a sponsor plaque on a Welcome to Berlin sign on River Road West, and the town will receive $2,500 through this agreement. It is good for 5 years. We are still working on our 2 big department head recruitments, fire chief and treasurer collector. The application period has closed for the fire chief. There are 8 candidates. MRI is conducting preliminary interviews and will be forwarding a short list to us for review. And the treasurer collector position hasn't been posted as long, but they're coming in slowly. I think, receive a 5th application over the weekend. Unfortunately, only 2 of them have any relevant experience. So I'd like to get the 2 in that do have the relevant experience, because there are, as you all know, many other communities recruiting for the same position. Starting to put together an interview panel for that position. I'd like to do kind of internal with possibly somebody external, our internal finance team, and possibly an external treasurer collector to kind of bring that together, and an odd number. So I'm looking at 5 for an interview panel for that. And of course, as more come in, if they're qualified, happy to interview. River Bridge, we continue to spend some time looking at that parcel 6 known as River Run. I met with the planning board, met with the River Bridge Working Group, and then Chris and I met with the Sennies. And there are a number of options that we're looking at to ensure the obligations of the development agreement are met. And it may require an additional modification to the agreement, which I don't think is a surprise to anyone, because that's kind of what we've been talking about. But we expect a proposal coming from the Sennies in the coming weeks. And I thought we had a good conversation with them. So let's see what else. I got to go to Assabet Valley, which was very exciting. Have a lovely lunch at their Epicurean Center, and I'm not going to respond to that, Peg. And I got to see some of the vocational programs, really incredible stuff that they're doing over there. So that was very, very cool. And we started discussing with the Capital Committee, as Chief Shartner mentioned. He and Fred discussed their requests, and I talked about ARPA, because as Capital informed me, ARPA requests are supposed to go through them. And I said, well, we kind of did cart before the horse a little bit, but here's what we're doing. And I explained everything, and they seemed okay with that. And let's see, I was contacted by a representative of the Stevens Foundation to discuss their plans for renovations at the former Spooky World property. They have some good ideas that they want to do down there, including a possible museum and a lot of historic renovations. So it sounds like a great project down there. As you all know, the police MOA was ratified by the union and approved by the select board at the last meeting. So that's come to an end, which is great. And not to end on a sour note, but unfortunately, our roof at the town offices began leaking on November 14th. We've put in an insurance claim. It's been patched. We had Service Master and the adjuster out already. Fred reached out to a company that had quoted us the first time on the roof. Yeah, that $200,000 quote has gone to $275 to $325 for the municipal office's roof. So obviously the project will have to be put out to bid, and additional funding will need to be identified. So wish I had a better note to end on, but that is the report.
Kristen, do you have a working document off to the side somewhere of things to remember for Maytown meeting, where we can put things like
I sure do.
13,000 for that change for the River Bridge agreement, and potentially more money for the roof?
I do.
Good.
I will make sure to add that to those lists. I believe River Bridge is already on there, and I'll double check.
Chris, Peg, questions?
No, I think I'm good.
Give her a pass this week.
Oh, that's nice of
then
you.
make me feel like I shouldn't ask questions then.
Feel free to ask any
uh,
questions.
Not for today, but for an upcoming meeting, we probably should talk about the earthworks bylaw.
Ugh.
So
Well,
I've actually gotten a copy of a couple ones that that were done in other communities.
Mhm.
And I know we had talked a little bit about that, Scott. I don't know if we want to, what your plans are on
I
that.
just, I am thinking that we might, as select board, sort of make it as much our amendment and not wait as much for the earthworks committee if they're not as interested or motivated at the moment. Just because I'd hate to think another year goes by. And I haven't looked at it or read it recently to see what condition I even think it is in at the moment.
Well, I mean, there's a version that KP Law put together and, oh, I can see her, Amy Creswell put together, which kind of combines earthwork importation and another one. So she has that, but before Margaret left, and Kristen, again, it's not a like on fire thing, but she had mentioned that the town of Middleborough, how they got around it was that it was a Board of Health issue that they deemed it like and I'll go find the information. They deemed it like a safety issue, which really kind of stopped bringing in non-native soil dead in its tracks. So it's a way around where it doesn't have to go to town vote. So let me get that. Let me get that to you. You know, when June comes back, she was also extremely instrumental in helping me find it, but I'll make a note and get that out to you. And yeah, and Scott, I agree. I've reached out twice to Earthworks Board and they just have gone cold.
Yep.
You know, last May they stood up and they're like, no, take it off. We're going to look at it. And yeah.
Yep. I mean, I think in some respects, it's you and me as much who would love to see this done as much as anyone else. And so since you and I can't really meet somewhere and do this, we'll do it through select board meetings so that we don't.
Well, the thing is that I want to avoid another issue that caused this whole kerfuffle. And
Yep.
not to say that there will be another issue, but you know what? If we can head it off at the pass with a memorandum from a Board of Health because it's a blah, 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 get it done. Get it done,
Well,
check it off.
And then
So,
we have all this, like, the current two bylaws. Is it like kind soil? Is it earthworks? Is it too much? And I think it is confusing to people who are even involved in it. I can only imagine if you're a business trying to do the right thing
right.
and not figuring out the best way forward. And so when a business wants to try to do the right thing, I want to somehow make it easy on them to do the right thing.
And they contradict each other. One
Yep.
will call for X amount and another amount calls for, a higher amount. So it's like, all right, well, which one do you want?
Yep.
So, but Kristen, I'll get that stuff on Middleborough and maybe, you know what? Maybe that's our way around it and we don't have an earthworks bylaw. It's just this. So I'll make a note to get that to you.
I think next on the agenda, we had discussed about potential ARPA products, but I think we've already done that part of it already tonight when the chiefs came in. Is there anything else on that item?
The only other thing was the roof, but you had mentioned to put that on for like a Maytown meeting article. I don't have a capital request in for that. I could see if they would let me put one through. At the time, we already had funding allocated and we didn't know that would be overfunding. We anticipated, but we didn't know for sure. Obviously, the leak has moved up the timeline for that.
Right. Christian Pegg, I jumped the gun to say, go back to capital town meeting, but I was sort of reading the room from our earlier conversation about an ambulance, but you're okay with going that path?
Yeah.
Or at least now? Okay. Good. Chris?
I was just going to say that maybe we put this on again, the potential ARPA projects that we haven't discussed that were still on the list that Kristen gave us. Just put it on again.
We meeting again on the 5th, right?
Yeah, the 5th or whatever Monday is good.
It is on the template almost every meeting. I sometimes
Yeah.
take it off when there's not things, but it is on our template for every meeting.
And if we wanted to put, if you wanted to have a discussion about earthworks, then we have to put it on the agenda.
Yep. And I think I have put it on the placeholder for that meeting, but I'll look. Do you want to start with new business or review and approve a highway mailbox policy?
Sure. So interestingly enough, June was working with Fred on this. I believe it was the first week that she was the interim town administrator. She ran into some issues with the inevitable mailbox swiping, hitting, touching, whatever you want to call it, while plowing, because unfortunately that happens. A lot of people put their mailboxes in the right of way. And it is a bit challenging. So she had reached out to another community, gotten a copy of their bylaw, and Fred and I looked at it, tweaked it up a little bit. And what I present to you this evening, and I'm trying to open it so I could share it on the screen, is the results of that, which Fred had asked if it would be possible to get this in before the winter time. And just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen here with you.
I thought it was fine.
It's pretty basic.
yeah.
But I think it
as long
outlines
as
the
it-
process.
As long as it included everything that Fred felt needed to be included. I think there was a few years ago, there was a battle about, whether the damage was done by the plow or whether it was done by snow being pushed into the mailbox. And I didn't know if that was covered in this or not.
Let's see. So this sort of more generally talks about, occasionally mailboxes are damaged while clearing the streets of snow and ice. Sometimes they can be struck by accident. And it does talk about direct contact, which is interesting because, and it does actually say the customer is required to keep the approach and the exit to the mailbox sufficiently cleared of snow for the carrier. But I'm not sure, Chris, if it addresses that one piece that you're talking about, if they push snow up against it.
Well, it's when you push the snow down the street and it may be snow that actually knocked over the mailbox. I think one of our previous highway superintendents used to use the rule that if they could show him the paint from, say, for example, the plow on the mailbox or the post, then that meant that the plow actually, I don't know. I want to make sure that what is in here will help Fred.
Yeah,
So
it
we're not
really
paying
just
for
addresses.
everybody to get a new mailbox.
Oh, no, I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I think that it just addresses direct contact. And in fact, if you go down in the second
Okay,
paragraph, it talks about mailboxes or posts damaged by the weight of plow. Is that windrow? That sounds like a technical term, which is the snow exiting at the end of the plow. It will not be covered under this policy.
okay. So it does cover it.
Yeah, it's saying basically if we hit your mailbox, that's one thing. If some snow, makes it a little out of shape. And it does address further down that the homeowner is responsible for, maintaining the mailbox, keeping it clear, and also making sure that things aren't loose. If you look at number 5, if
Right,
you have a rotted mailbox post and, a little bit of snow bumps it, we don't want to be responsible for all of those.
right. No, I thought it was good. Would you like a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
I would make a motion to approve the highway mailbox policy.
Seconded.
I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Key-fi.
Stone Eye.
I'm just scared that clicking the X on the screen that Kristen is sharing does not close that tab and let me go back to my agenda. I have to close the X on my real screen where I have that policy. Up.
I know. I just got out of it, so hopefully you should be okay.
No, I'm fine. It was my I have 2 identical looking screens and one is your shared screen and one is my screen on my laptop. And
Yeah.
anyway, let's see, discuss and vote on the town's insurance carrier for fiscal year 24 and 25.
So this is an interesting one. We received a letter from Maya, who I understand the town has been with for maybe forever or a number of years. They are offering, if we sign a letter now, they will give us a 0% increase for FY24 and no more than a 2.5% increase.
We've done this several times before.
Oh, you have? Okay, sorry, then I'm beating the dead horse. The
I'm
only
sorry, if
reason
I had known that that was your question about it, I would have said something.
No, that's okay. The only reason I brought it up is I was also approached by a competitor insurance company who wanted to quote us. I gave him all the requested information. However, it's been a month and he hasn't been able to provide this quote.
Yeah.
He says, I can save you some money. I just don't think, Joanne said it's fine as long as we get it to her this week. I think it makes sense to stay with Maya if you all have had a good experience with them.
And so this again is liability insurance, not health insurance, correct?
Correct. This is liability, workers' comp,
Yeah.
police, fire, accident, IOD.
And my standpoint is that even if a competitor could right now save us some money, you're still a relatively new town administrator with a fairly large thing to do. And that if the current carrier who we like is offering a 0% for the current year and 2.5% for next year, I think this is worth doing and then kick the do a more thorough review 2 years down the road. I'm fine with that.
So
That makes sense to me.
I would make a motion to approve of Maya for the FY24 and FY25 fiscal years.
Seconded.
I think we're ready to vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe,
Stone eye.
Then Kristen, air handler contract.
I'll make this one easy. If we could pass over, please, because I cannot seem to find the procurement for this quote as much as I've been digging for it. So I need to continue to look into this.
Okay, I'll add it to next week's agenda. Select board budget. I am told budgets are due tomorrow. We are part of budgets. We probably should talk about our budget and
Yes.
so where would you like to start on that?
Budgets are due Wednesday to the town accountant.
Yeah.
That's important because she wants to receive them first so she can go through them. And the select board budget doesn't really have a whole lot of changes. Why am I seeing it in the,
So I think it is
did it get in the folder?
it's not in the folder. I couldn't find it in the folder.
Oh, okay.
you've drafted, I assume.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We drafted it up, Mary and I, and, we looked at a couple of things. One was consulting services and looking at, putting 2.5% into the consulting services because that seems to be where the biggest charges come from. There were a couple of small increases and Mary, if you want to chime in if I'm forgetting, but there were a couple
Yep,
of small increases in fees.
There's a couple of things. Sorry,
ahead.
my bad. There was a couple of things that were cut below our actual fixed expenses for this year. They're not large, but they're not huge. In other words, we were able to cover them. Town center disposal of trash in front of the general store was budgeted at $260 when our real expense is $320. So that's a $60 increase. Bulk mail permit was budgeted for $89. It's really $91. That's up $2. Like a bunch of nickel and dime stuff. Dues to the MMA was budgeted as $300 and it was really $580. That's a 52% increase, but it's not a ton of money. The couple larger things that happened last year was consulting was spiked because there needed to be executive recruitment for a town administrator. So that caused consulting to go up by quite a bit. And also there's the fire chief search, which is underway, which will be hitting this year's. So last year's had half of TA and the other half this year, and then there's fire chief consulting searches. Another thing that happened last year to this year was last year, there was not budgeting for the fact that the ATM warrant in the finance committee's report was not consumed within the ATR, annual town report, so that there was a separate copying cost and a separate postage cost that was not put into the annual town report budget. So it had to be assumed by the select board budget in large measure. So this year, some of that I just needed a little bit more time to mess around with, because I don't think we're going to order as many hard books this year. But it's also hard to throw a dart and guess how much the printing cost will be, because so much of the printing cost is really still the setup. And someone will still charge for the setup. And Kristen went to Assabet and saw the work that they do, and it's not perfect bound, but it's presentable. You know, it's the same kind of Assabet budget book that they present at our town meeting. That could be our town report, just stapled in the middle. Ultimately, still Eloise every 5 years binds those into a book. And otherwise, are people throwing these out? Is the online copy just as good? So there's probably other ways to skin the cat to save money on annual town report, but there's still, unless you're able to get the warrant and the budget back in the annual town report, which Kristen and I kind of favor. Yes, there's a buy that allows you to separate it, but people still want to be able to see everything in one source if possible. That would save on, well, it would save on the separate printing cost, but it would not save. By the way, not all towns mail the annual town report and the finance. My town doesn't, for example. Kristen's town in Leicester didn't. They told people that it was online. There were some copies made available, but we have a bylaw that requires that the annual town report, no, not the annual town report, that the warrant is mailed to every household. That's not what the law requires. And also the finance committee's report gets mailed to every household. That's not required by law either. It's by law that's driving that. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my goal is, when I've always wanted to separate them, is that the annual town report is sort of for the fiscal year that ends December 31st. And I'd love to get that out way, way, way earlier than the annual town meeting report, annual town meeting warrant articles.
Well, that's all well and good, but the finance committee is still, even last year, it wasn't anyone's doing. It's just the way that the budget, you know, everything keeps coming together, is that it didn't get to the printers that much sooner. It did get there sooner, but it still was within a week or two of town meeting.
Again, separating that, I think the town report is a totally separate monster that should be done like in the next 30 days. Because it isn't such the calendar year, and it can be put together in January and sent out way, 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 way ahead of the warrant articles. And I think the warrant articles still should sort of be a separate thing. It gets its own focus, so that the budget, the FinCom report, and the warrant articles are buried in a 125-page document, and instead would be the focus of what gets mailed out. And we were right. For the annual town report, we make a lot fewer of them. We have them available in some places around town. I don't know why we couldn't, just as a town, decide that the line item of the budget that is town report, line 195, 5700 is, you know, town report and town meeting items just roll into one budget line. But at the end of the day, the cost is the cost of the taxpayers. They don't care what line item the budget it goes to.
Yeah, annual town report is probably going down a little bit, especially if we ditch that really bound book approach. And the selectmen need to have the postage put into its, you know, where it was in the annual town report historically.
And so when we separated out consulting and expenses in fiscal year 21, the expenses for select board was 8,200.
Yeah, there was a very precipitous drop.
Yes, it was a very precipitous drop, although we went from nothing in consulting to 20,000 in consulting.
Yeah, that's
and
just
then in fiscal year 22, we cut the select board expenses even by another $3,000.
Yep. That left you nothing, including the suggestion that there be MCPPO training. There's no money for that. The MMA dues, there was half the money now. You know, there was such a huge just cutting. And that's another thing. Do you want your, or does Kristen want the assistant to the town administrator to get that training to help her with procurements or not? So that's another kind of policy sort of, what do you want me to do type directive, you know? So it wasn't a direct straight line this year putting the budget together. Usually it's very, very simple.
Right. And then the consulting line we use mostly for the hiring of department heads.
No, largely historically Weston and Sampson, because all the ongoing monitoring LSP services is through consulting. That was like $17,000 last year.
And we have no sense when that's ever going to end. Like that's been going on.
It does not necessarily end ever.
So consulting used to be combined with
Legal,
town council.
yes. And June
And now
felt and
it's-
Margaret agreed that it deserved to be separately broken out because consulting is the LSP. It's also been used by Beth Greenblatt of Beacon Integrated Solutions for some appellate tax board pilot discussion over POTUS's farm ZPE. It was also AMP Energy, our net metering. So we needed, I think that was like $1,000 worth of energy consulting. And then when there was executive recruitments, that also came out of consulting, and that was unexpected, right? You could almost say arguably it was an RFT because we didn't expect to have that executive search.
Well, and I would agree with that approach too. And I would add that consulting services are those kinds of services that occasionally come up throughout the year that you don't anticipate. And that is an acceptable, article to have, because if something comes up, like you need an LSP to look at something, you may not necessarily know that in advance. It all depends on which projects are kind of falling where they will.
So would it be possible to, I don't have a draft of this budget in front of me. Would it be possible for you to send us a draft after you've put it together and say, this is what we recommend? And then we can take a look at it at the next meeting?
But it's past the deadline.
It is past the
Well,
deadline.
it's past the
it's
But
deadline.
we don't have something in the, we
There
don't,
was-
we don't have
there
a
was
draft to
nothing-
like debate tonight.
There was nothing in the Google Drive, so I think we'll cut ourselves a break.
Yeah, it's past the deadline, but they're going to go back and forth a few times anyways, so we
Right.
can certainly
Oh.
discuss that.
The selectmen's, I would change the line from select men's salary, by the way, to select board.
I already noted that. Yep.
Okay, good.
It's right on the
Um,
top with an asterisk.
I imagine that's just going up by the percentage, what's the cost of living that was adjusted for everyone else. We're not getting any more and we're
Yeah,
not getting any
elected
less.
salaries would go up by $96. Everything has to be divisible by 3.
Right.
So the total there would go from 3765 to 3861.
Okay.
And this is just chicken scratcher. I'd put it up on the
Yeah,
screen. Full-time
then-
wages, 2.5%,
Okay, yeah.
and then that's the end of it. That's the end of personnel services. For consulting, it was 20,000 and Kristen suggested going up by 2.5% to 20,500 because it is an unknown. It's just an account. But Weston Sampson they haven't increased their fee yet.
Okay.
And everyone else
But
seems to be
But it's
doing it.
also in theory, that project that even in the agreement between us and the town had an estimated end date that is in the past. And so you would think that project at some point is coming to an end.
So we, it's probably not something you want to get into tonight.
Nope. So
Um,
anyhow, that was gonna go up by 2.5 to 20,500, if that makes sense.
Right.
And
And you're
and
saying-
then, go ahead.
I was gonna say
then-
expenses.
Yeah, so the first thing under expenses I changed to trash because that's how we roll, is that we have trash, which is a fixed expense, Hudson Disposal Town Center, from 260 to 320, up $60, 2.3%. Budget, there was a supplemental. It has to go postage, which we had before, which I haven't fished this out yet, but it went up by $801.16 due to that postage for mailing out the annual term. So I got to boost that up, and I have to go tease that out. Our bulk mail permit, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you're thinking the number is gonna be in about a $7,000 range when you're done from a 5,200, but
Yeah, let's
still
see if I
well-
added 800.
well below the
there.
8,300 it was in fiscal year 21.
It would be up 3,500 to 4,000.
So you're thinking it's gonna be near a $9,000 number by the
Well,
time.
because Kristen has suggested, on top of what Margaret's suggestion was for MCPPO training, that there
Yeah.
be the availability anyhow, even if the trigger wasn't pulled this year. Oh, by the way, MCPPO, each class is like, it's 700. The
Yeah.
first class is 600, the second one is 700, and that's probably as much as you could knock off in year 1.
Yep.
And then if you can get a spot, and then the next year you'd have to do the 3rd mandatory course before you could become so designated. And then there's continuing education down the road on that, but not as onerous as this initial lifting. And then another thing is the MMA SLDP, Kristen, that stands for.
Supervisor Leadership Development Program, excuse me,
Yeah.
Supervisory Leadership Development program. Some of the things I talked about, if, you know, future possibilities for training in the budget, those would all be supplemental funding requests that the board.
And
would-
I'm just trying to get a sense of the ballpark at this point, because I agree with Chris. I
Right.
don't think we're taking a vote on this tonight.
No,
Does the
I'd
town,
rather have it in front of me too.
town
and I don't have
admin
it.
salary and expenses come to us too? Or is that, Chris, something you're just submitting?
I'm sorry, Scott, I didn't hear
Town
the,
administrator, salary and expenses, budget, are we gonna see that before it goes to sort of FinCom or?
I usually, I was planning on submitting that, you know, I can certainly show you. I was thinking we were just talking select board, but I'm
No,
happy
that's
to
fine.
share.
I'm trying to figure out what is the bucket that is select board.
So this, what we're talking about is the select board bucket.
Well,
So-
there's also more though, because
'cause-
you
Because
you
there's
have
gonna be the
purview.
legal expenses that are
Yep.
further down. Yep.
Legal is already more than 50% spent. It's actually, the burn rate has been quite high. You've had a lot of legal expenses, as you all know. So throwing a dart there is something I'd like to talk to Kristen about, and I want to, you know, talk to her about that
Yeah.
some more. Then there's
And then-
data systems, which is 155. That's been within budget because a lot of that's contractual. It just keeps playing up month after month.
Okay. And then, what else falls under select board? Do we take care of like,
The rest of it starts becoming pretty easy. Hold
Right.
on, let me just get there.
just like, there's like streetlights is us?
Oh, yeah, that, we don't even handle that. The accounting does
I
that.
thought the
Right.
agenda just said select board budget.
Yeah, I know, but you really do
I'm
have
just- I'm
purview
trying
of
to get a
other ones.
sense of-
Town reports.
I know. I
Town
know.
reports is 195. That's, like I said, that's a little switcheroo, but it's probably
Yeah.
down a little bit because of
Yeah.
printing costs. Community social services, 599, has been historically just wheat.
Yep,
And whatever unspent balance goes back.
yep,
Festive events, 694 is constantly token funded for 500. There's several
Yep.
years of not using that at all.
okay,
Then there's then there are insurances, workman's comp, 912. It's kind of is what it is.
Yep.
You just
but let
voted
me
at
know-
0%, so
Yeah.
that's good.
Well, 0% unless we have other things that spike it, right? But at least Maya is promising, then they've been good about that. The
Yeah.
only things that change our insurances is when we add a lot of vehicles or add more property, but that's to be expected. But so they otherwise honor that. And then police and fire sickness and accident, or called 111F, is 916. That's also contractual with Chubb. That's based on our roster.
okay.
We haven't had problems with, so that's 912, 916, and 945. That's the end of everything that you guys have.
And so, if you, Kristen could have a budget, we'll put it on the meeting for the 5th to talk about those numbers across all of those line items. I just, again, thank you. I wanted to get a sense of, because I knew that select board was more just those 4 lines of at the top of the budget. So I wanted to get a sense of what all of those were.
We'll make it more clear on the agenda too, and we'll get it up on the screen and get it in the folder in advance. of the meeting.
I think,
My-
mean,
my apologies.
honestly, each have a copy to look at. That's fine. And I mean, it's just easier, you know.
Sure. No, we'll make sure I have that, Chris, for the 5th. Absolutely.
Okay. I think that brings us to board questions and comments. Peg, Chris?
I'll go last. I got stuff.
Okay, Chris?
I don't have anything.
All right.
Yeah, I think the only one I want is historic and the Berlin Arts and Stores. I did have their arts and craft, they did have their vintage art sale that sold.
Thank you. Thank you.
There
for
was a
sending-
lot of stuff out there and they raised about $1,000, so.
Thank you for sending the text that morning because I wanted to go and I had forgotten. So thank you. And
I want to point
I
out,
did get myself one of those heavy duty iron things.
oh, nice.
That you use for a doorstop.
First off, yep. We grabbed one of those as well because we have one door in the house that doesn't use one of those. And so
Yep.
that now it's just consistent around the house. And my other big find is a painting of, it's actually hanging around the corner, a painting of First Parish Church done by my grandfather and donated to the Historic Society in the 1990s. So we actually, he did, you know, not the world's greatest painter, but did a lot of nice paintings. And we actually have a photo album of all the paintings he did. And that one was not in the list of paintings we as family knew about. So not only do we now know about it, but it is now back owned by us, which makes me appreciative.
Yeah.
And then the EDC stuff, I went to EDC, but we've talked about their things as well. So Peg, go for it.
All right, Christmas in Berlin, Saturday, 3:30, be there. Smiley from the Woo Sox will be there at 3:30 with a few Woo Sox ambassadors. I'll be strolling around in a costume, so if you want to see what I'm gonna be, well, you gotta show up. So there was in the community advocate, I know this is crappy, but I had sent out, kind of goes along with the presentation regarding state prepares for 400 million interchange replacement project. So between 495 and the Pike, it was just a nice additional article. This paper is free to subscribe to, so I would suggest getting it. They also had a nice article, which I've shared with Victoria on NCOA offers online resources. NCOA is the National Council on Aging. So again, you know, something that can be shared with our town folks. And let's see. So there was something, wanted to get your opinion. Feel free to, I'm checking off my items. Feel free to leave this till next week. But something that I wanted to go to the school committee on to see if we could get kids at Tohoto who are interested in it. So the name of this article is Shrewsbury High School students create used cooking oil recycle program. So they're taking all the cooking oil that the high school uses and they have an agreement with, oh, I can't find it at the moment. But it basically, you know, helps their green footprint. So I figured, I know that seniors and juniors are always starting to look for something to put on their resume to colleges for programs. And since this one is already up and running, you know, it might be beneficial to see if anybody wants to do anything with. I'm sure between Berlin and Tohoto and Boylston Elementary, they use quite a bit of cooking oil. So wouldn't it be nice to have it recycled to do that, and it just doesn't go anywhere. He said that it turns into a biodiesel, non-toxic, clean burning, and reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 86%. Boom. So, you know, didn't know if this is, you know, and I'll be glad to, you know, like print it and send it around. But again, something that I'd like to talk to the school committee about, along with the piece of 9/11 tower that we have that unfortunately is sitting in a closet, which I'll withhold comment, but if there is anything that can be done, I know that Assabet has taken pieces from 9/11 and has done some really nice things for the town of Shrewsbury to honor those who have lost their lives because of that tragedy. So again, it's something that it's an easy fix. It doesn't really involve us. It involves, you know, probably me asking, does anybody want to, you know, insert comment here compared to just letting it sit and go by and think, you know, hey, that's cool. I wonder if anyone else reads the newspaper. But you know me, I steal stuff all the time from other towns. So there's that. So we can talk about, you know, if I can go to school committee and talk about that.
I think you could probably go just as a Berlin resident and ask.
Okay.
I don't know if you'd need to go, you know, through us.
As me. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I can do that. So there's, again, you know, this paper, I love it, and it frustrates the crap out of me because I look at what other communities like Westboro and Northboro and Southboro are doing for business development. And I know that Berlin doesn't have the storefront that those cities and towns have. But, you know, Kristen, my question to you, I know that you're meeting with Representative Trahan's person soon. Are there any, you know, like, you know, Westboro has one. Oh, I don't know where it is. I dog-eared the page so I can find it. And of course I can't find it. But are there any committees or any groups that we can join, like for Clinton and Hudson, those around, because if somebody, my concern is that if somebody comes to them and says, hey, we would love a storefront to sell, and the town says, I don't have any room, I would love for them to be able to come to Berlin and say, do you have any room? And we say, well, not in downtown Berlin, but you know what? We got a mall on this end that has space, and we got a mall on this end that has space. So I just want to make sure that those connections are there, that those dots are there, that as we're trying to, potentially save Solomon Pond Mall, it's becoming pretty vacant. What else can we do? I know that EDC is probably doing stuff, but I just kind of like to know what options that we have out there to start working with neighboring communities. If they can't fulfill a need, is it something that they can come to Berlin? Because they may not even know that they can come to Berlin on.
So
there's
Peg, on that
that.
one, there is a Neshoba Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
I don't know how active the town has been in it in the past.
Okay.
I can certainly look into it, and I don't know if, I feel like I've seen some emails fly back and forth from them, so I
I'll
can
do it.
Okay.
Kristen, you don't need to do that. This is not a lift on you. This was more of a, hey, do you know? So I will take that, hey, do you know? And I'll report back.
All right,
Um,
Neshoba Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Yep, got it. And then my last question, especially as we're inching into budget season ever so quickly, can we start meeting in person again? For this, I look through with the My Town Government, and I know that Governor Baker said that we didn't have to come back, but I looked at all the committees and commissions that we have in town. There are 11 that are meeting in person. There are 4 that are not. We are one of those 4. And out of those 3 remaining, 2 meet twice a month, 1 meets once a month. So can we start to think about coming back? I mean, this is great, but especially as we get into budgets, I think it's much easier if we're all together looking at something, and rather than saying, oh, I can't access it. Oh, it's not in the drive. Oh, where are you looking? I'm on page 3. No, I'm on page 4. So I wanted to put that ask out there. And we can leave that up for debate, Scott, if you want to plop it on another agenda, that would be awesome.
Right, writing the note now.
All right, and then, the committee updates, Earthworks, we already beat that horse. Rec, they're getting busy for activities for Xmas in Berlin. Energy, I missed the last meeting because they meet in person and it conflicted with the one that we had. And Concom, I believe, canceled their last meeting, so we're good as far as updates. Okay.
Great. There are other comments and questions from anybody? Well, great. We do not have an executive session tonight. I think there's probably one coming up in the next one in the next couple of meetings based on River Bridge, which is having some stuff. And since that's a negotiation, that is probably better for an executive session. Other than that, I think we are ready to adjourn. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
I think we're ready to vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone Eye.